Welcome, Raiders. Thank you so much for raiding tonight, Gamer Stitch. Thank you so much for the raid. My name is Tai Wai. I am the creator of the Aceback podcast, also a PhD student during the day. We do Pokemon as well on this channel, but lately, throughout the month of June, the focus has been the Aceback podcast. Thank you so much for rating today. I know what it's like having finished the stream and rating on in. If you need to do a bunch of self-care, please go do so. IRL, as I like to say, before URL. But welcome everyone, and thank you so much for choosing us to raid into. So, welcome to the Aceback podcast. The Aceback podcast is a podcast that explores the lived experiences of asexuality and aromanticism with a particular focus on intersectional identity. And today, we have the honor to be chatting with Matsu. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my fairies. My name is Matsuyo-rific. I mainly stream over on YouTube. We do all sorts of fun stuff over on YouTube, playing video games, we do art, and I'll sometimes talk about cartoons and anime. We mainly play Pokemon, but we also play Persona every Sunday for what we like to call Per Sunday. And sometimes we also do various other games as well. And I also review Miraculous Ladybug as well. So if you enjoy that stuff, definitely be sure to hop on over sometime.
Absolutely, it's always fun hanging out in your streams, like hanging out, especially in Per Sunday. That's always a lot of fun.
Oh
wish
yeah.
wish I could do it more lately. My schedule's been so incredibly hectic, but hopefully things will start to go back to a little bit normal of a pace come July. And welcome on in, Busby. Thank you again for rating Gamer Stitch. So, the first question that I have is, often aspec identities can be difficult to pinpoint for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Owing to the fact that it can often be difficult to identify a lack of attraction without context, especially, understanding that in reality there's all sorts of different kinds of attraction and how that can lead to confusion for many folks. I've talked to many folks who have, mistaken, say, aesthetic attraction for sexual attraction, and, emotional connections through like tertiary attraction for romantic attraction. How easy was it for you to come to realize your aspec identities?
It took a long time. I grew up in the 90s when we didn't really have a lot of information about being LGBTQ plus. Like, back in my day, it was cool to call someone gay because you thought they were lame and very cringe, definitely for sure.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time. Ever since I was a child, I always wanted to be a mom. So I dated mainly for the sake of finding someone who would be my partner and, be a father with me. So that kind of distracted me a little bit from really realizing that I might not actually be attracted to men. Uh, and it took me a while. I eventually did realize that I was demisexual before I realized I was aromantic, in that I knew that I had that attraction, but that it only really occurred when I was like in a relationship. But it wasn't until my very last partner, and I'm going to call them a partner because they did come out after we broke up as a trans female. But at the time, they were, they didn't know that yet. But when they broke up with me, they made a comment about how it felt like wasn't really into the relationship as a relationship, and that really confused me at the start until one day I realized, they might have actually had a point. That, I never really approached my romantic relationships as a romantic relationship in the more common sense with, the flowers on Valentine's Day. It's like, nope, nope. I'm going to tell you up front, don't give me flowers on Valentine's Day. They will die. The chocolates and stuff, hand holding, it just never really felt right to me. And it wasn't until they made that comment that I realized they have a point. I've never been into that stuff. And that was when I realized that I was aromantic. Uh, my friend Fishy helped me to find there's a more specific term because I'm aromantic, but I enjoy watching couples be coupley and I enjoy shipping culture. I know that there's a specific term for that because aspec, it's a spectrum on its own. I can't remember the actual term right now, but that's my identity basically.
Yeah, I know the term you're talking about. It's like on the tip of my tongue. Shoot. But yeah, there's absolutely a micro label I've come across that kind of describes that exactly. And I can certainly relate to you saying that, you didn't necessarily take, approach relationships in the way that somebody would traditionally approach relationships. I very much found the whole romantic aspects of a relationship always very uncomfortable. And whenever that would ever come up in any of the very limited attempts at relationships I had, it made it just seem like this is not where I want this to be going. So I can certainly sympathize with that aspect for sure.
Yep.
Duke said, would you say that you're romance favorable, or would you say that, how would you describe yourself on the romance favorability side of things?
I mean, like I said earlier, I enjoy seeing relationships and I know everything that's I understand what it means to be in a healthy
Mhm.
relationship. Uh I don't believe that I'm particularly the type of person who can give everything that would require a healthy give and take romantic
Yeah,
relationship.
same.
I do my best, for my platonic relationships and everything, but just not really in that kind of headspace for those more romantic relationships. But I enjoy seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, my best friend and my roommate are both in a relationship with each other, and they are the most adorable couple I've ever seen. So,
Aw. Absolutely. I can certainly sympathize and relate to that for sure. So were there any communities or resources, both of us, grew up in a time period when aromanticism, aspec identity was not really talked about. There wasn't really much in the way of visible um, aspec representation anywhere. And
mhm.
would you say that there were any communities or resources that you found helpful to come to better understand your own identity?
Not really in particular. It was more something that I just kind of stumbled across. I didn't even know that it was possible for two men to like each other until I met my best friend Fishy, who kind of introduced me to the LGBTQ plus community. And I basically, everything that I've learned about the community, I've learned from them, from interacting with other people online, watching other people go through their journeys. Uh, Another thing that kind of helped me out was I'll watch other people's videos about themselves coming out, and Jaden Animations made a video about her realization for being Aero Ace, and that was another thing that really helped me with my realization as well. That was like the light bulb switch. It's like, oh, that's what my old partner meant. It's like, yeah, this does kind of sound like me.
Absolutely. And I've
So,
talked to many people that said Jaden's video was really helpful for them. So absolutely.
mhm, yeah, it's basically just been seeing stuff online and realizing, oh, yeah, that makes sense for me.
That makes so much sense. For me, it really was, 2018, 2019, coming to meet folks through the Aces and STEM Discord, talking with them and being like, yeah, I can relate to a lot of these aspects, around, at the time, asexuality. And then it's like, oh yeah, I then really started thinking about aromanticism. I'm like, yep, yeah, yeah, all these boxes are being checked. And it certainly kind of came about that way for me. So it's only been in the last 7 or 8 years that I came to learn of my own aspec identity. So it's, not all that, it's still fairly new for me as well.
Mhm.
So Julia Sandra Decker in 2014 coins the term the invisible orientation for asexuality. So while that term refers to asexuality, I would argue that aromanticism faces many, many similar challenges as well, and is even less understood, I would say, than asexuality is in the broader society.
Oh yeah, especially since they are very much separate. Like there are a lot of people who are both aro ace like yourself, but then there's also people who are like who experience romantic attraction but don't experience sexual attraction. People like myself who don't experience romantic attraction but do experience sexual attraction. And that can be another thing that can make it really difficult to have that realization about yourself is like, oh, well, I feel this one thing, so I have to be allo romantic, allo sexual. It's like, no, you can be one or the other.
Yeah, and kind of coming for me, it's I identify under the gray umbrella of asexuality, and that's why it took me so long
Mhm,
to really come to that realization as well, because of that fact that I've had those limited times where I've experienced sexual attraction. It's like, am I ace? Am I ace enough? I've had that discussion many times, but thinking about it compared to most of the other folks I know, yeah, absolutely. But it certainly, that gray aspect makes it just that much more difficult to kind of figure out sometimes.
mhm,
And aromanticism, I mean, Yasmin Benoit and a bunch of other folks have done fabulous work, doing a bunch of work to really get society to understand, yeah, asexuality exists, and we're not going to go anywhere. There hasn't
mhm.
been to the same degree any big names advocating around aromanticism to the same degree. So I don't think, most people I come across at Pride don't really understand what aromanticism actually is, what it means, or they'll confuse it for asexuality. So, like, it is very invisible
And
as a
part of that
whole.
might also be due to the fact that, like, as much as we probably don't want to admit it, a lot of the visibility actually comes from for homosexuality comes from the homophobes that make such a big deal about it. A lot of the same for being trans. A lot of that attention comes from the transphobes who make such a big deal about it. But they're not really focused on us because, as far as they're concerned, oh, well, you're not out here dating people of the same sex as you, so you're not really a threat to us. Which is a terrible way to think about it, but like, logically, it does kind of make sense when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. unfortunately, J.K. Rowling did actually go after the ace community this year during
Ugh.
in April on International Asexuality Day. So it was actually probably the most, I guess it was probably, it had the most trending I've ever seen it on that social media platform formerly known as Twitter, thanks to all the horrible things that Rowling said about it. But you are right in that,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of unfortunate visibility that has come about because of the uh, queerphobic, the transphobic, and obviously now the acephobic shit that has been said over the years that has been done against the queer community. Aromanticism has not really faced that same degree. It's kind of hid in under the radar to some degree, and it doesn't really
Mhm.
have the same visibility, if you will, as some of the other identities.
Yeah, Rowling's a biscuit. I never got into Harry Potter, but she makes me glad that I did it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We don't need any of that in this channel for sure. Uh, right, Duke. And when we
Oy.
think about media representation, the only media representation of aromanticism, if it exists at all, is of, you know, kind of really poor depictions of aro ace is like Jughead or the Sherlock
Mhm.
Holmes, or, you know, just really stereotypical poor representation of, you know, aro ace characters.
Like,
And
I think
there's
so far the quote unquote best representation we've had is through Alistair from Has Been Hotel, and like, you know, who is canonically Arrow Ace. Vivzy Pop has come out multiple times to say, hey, you know, he's Arrow Ace. He's not really attracted to anyone. And they acknowledge it with like a quick joke in the show, like, oh, Alistair, I know you're an ace in the hole. And like, I do kind of like that it's, you know, that kind of, I do kind of like that representation where it's like, yeah, we acknowledge it, but we're not gonna make a big deal out of it because it's just normal.
yeah,
Uh, it's nice to have the representation where it's pointed out, and in order to show that, hey, you know, this is what it's like. But yeah, like Alistair really is the only one I can think of that that everybody knows is Arrow Ace and is handled at least, you know, with as much respect as we can like hope for.
absolutely. But beyond the aro ace representation, I don't know of any aromantic representation that I can really think of in media.
Yeah, you mentioned Jughead, and it's like, oh, I didn't even know that he was.
Yeah, unfortunately, his aro aceness was written out of Riverdale, so they erased that aspect of his character. But if you look back at the original Archie comics, you could, you know, make the argument, and I think the creator has acknowledged canonically that Jughead is aro ace, but
Yeah.
not great representation by any stretch.
Yeah, the only other character I could think of was I saw something on Twitter last year where the someone behind the Sonic franchise, like they put out something for Pride Month of Sonic that was like, oh yeah, he's Aero Ace, and it's like, okay, but you also have Amy who is constantly flirting with him, and that makes that really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very true. So thinking kind of about the invisibility, you know, the fact that aromanticism is so well, you know, so misunderstood. There's limited representation in the media. How has this invisibility, and also I would argue, like, as well, erasure occurs around aromanticism. I've certainly experienced it. How has this impacted your journey?
I mean, I would at the very least say that it's definitely delayed it. Uh, I'm also autistic, so there's a lot of things that I don't think about as much as other people that really should bother me, but don't always do. At least not like right away until I'm like really, really thinking about it. So it in that sense, it hasn't really like impacted me in like a way that I could say is like really heavily negative. But I'm sure that if there was more representation out there, I probably could have had my realization a lot sooner about what exactly does keep me from feeling those kinds of feelings.
Absolutely. And, you know, the fact that society tells us from the time we're little kids, you will be in that relationship, or you just haven't found the right person yet. That is the most common thing I hear from everyone. It's the question at every Christmas dinner. It's the question every time I go back to visit. So when are you finding someone? That makes it really difficult to come to realize that you may not experience that because you're told from the time that you're a little kid that you will. And so it can really take a lot of critical self-reflection, and it did for me, to come to realize my own aromanticism and reject this notion that I am destined to follow the relationship escalator.
And it really is ironic when you think about it. The homophobes and transphobes are so afraid that if we have that representation, that it's going to turn the kids gay. But like, I grew up on Disney. I've told you that I love watching relationships. So it's like using their logic, nobody, like everybody would be straight because because like, oh, we've been sheltered from everything else for so long, but like clearly that's not the case. You and I are both on the ASPEC and
Definitely both
we've been
aromantic.
shown yeah, we've been shown all this stuff our entire lives. That never stopped us from becoming, or that's not the right word, from realizing what we are. Because you don't just become
No,
aro ace, you don't just become
no.
gay or trans. You are so, and then you realize who you are later on in life when you gain more sense of self.
And because that information, because that representation doesn't exist, all it does is delay us figuring it out.
hmm
Causes a lot of, pain. It
And that fear
causes,
can get in the
yeah,
way too.
absolutely. It creates a lot of fear. It creates a lot of questions. All it does is make it harder. It doesn't change anyone. That's a complete lie. That's a complete myth. All you're doing is
Yeah.
hurting folks by refusing to put that representation in there, refusing to allow folks to see, hey, this is visible representation that I can somehow relate to. That doesn't really exist much for aromanticism. And thank you so much for the gift sub to Little Mixer, Hugster Duke. Far too kind, as always.
Thank you very much. I think Leo wants to say thank you too. He came up and is like, "Oh," he looked like he was going to nuzzle the microphone a bit. Leo's
Aww.
my cat, for everyone who doesn't know.
So, as we've been talking about, aromanticism is so heavily misunderstood. What are some of the most frustrating misconceptions that you've experienced around aromanticism?
Uh, I would say, like, just coming out to my family that is very ignorant of the whole thing. My egg donor side of the family, it's all like very Christian and stuff. I've never heard anybody say anything homophobic or transphobic from that side of the family, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me. I came out to my aunts and told them that I was Aro Ace, and I got the usual questions like, "Are you sure? You sure? I mean, maybe you just still need to just find the right person. Are you sure?" And it's like, "Yes, I'm sure." And then my dad, who's very much on the opposite end of Christianity. He doesn't like not believe, but he hasn't had anything to make him believe. But I told him that I was aromantic, and he's like, "Well, it's probably better that you don't date because you're not very attractive." What? What is that for you? What? Like, he's not pressuring me to date, but like, what is that to say to your child?
Really? Like, what the heck? I just realized that was muted. I'm so sorry. That is so incredibly messed up. I'm so sorry.
Now Leo's upset. He's attacking my hands.
Ugh. For me, I know that I've been told at, recent Pride events in the last couple of years. So how do you actually know? Have you, like, what if you found someone? I'm like, this has been a pattern for 37 years of my life. I've noticed this pattern continuously. I've come up with excuses as to why I don't actually want to date. If I had not figured this out now, why would I be telling you this? I'm aromantic. Like, it's so frustrating to just get erased time and time again, and for people
Especially
to tell you. Yeah.
Especially when it does come from the LGBTQ community,
Right?
because those are the same questions that people ask gay people. It's like, "Oh, are you sure you're gay? Have you been in a straight relationship? Are you sure?" You're asking us the exact same questions that you hate to be asked.
Yep, exactly. And so you can see how this evolves out of compulsory heterosexuality, compulsory romance. They're all interrelated, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually do have a bit of a unique perspective, because like I mentioned before, that my one whole side of the family is Christian. I myself am also Christian, but I'm a Christian who believes both in God and science. That God made science the way that it is. That it's by design. And there has been scientific studies that show that people's brains, depending on where you are on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, do work differently. Like, there have been studies that where they did brain scans on both trans men and women and cis men and women, and found that a trans man's brainwaves are the same as a cis man's brainwaves. And that's kind of helped me with my faith. It's like, okay, so yes, that kind of proves right there that God makes us this way. He made me cis. He made my roommates to be non-binary. He made you to be non-binary, and it kind of frustrates me as a Christian who is in the LGBTQ plus community to see not only people who claim to be my faith, but while also completely betraying the teachings of our faith, but also seeing how much people of my faith have been demonized where it's like, oh, you're Christian, so that means you're a homophobe, right? Not really. Uh, and like that's one of those things that I do try to share and stuff. So like you don't have to be a homophobe if you're Christian. Uh, because Christian, the basic Christian faith is about love and acceptance, and judge not lest ye be judged yourself. uh Nobody gets to decide who's going to heaven or hell except for God. I don't get to decide if if Karen down the road, who just screamed at two girls holding hands down the street, is going to hell, any more than she gets to decide that those girls are going to hell. It's not our place. But that is definitely something that does get frustrating. Is seeing all of this happen with and knowing that there are so many Christians out there who do feel that way, but there's also a lot of Christians out there who feel the way that I do.
Absolutely. And it seems like in that case, religion's being used as an excuse to hide behind.
Exactly.
So it certainly does make things extremely infuriating and difficult. I can totally imagine, because there is really a difficult relationship for many folks in the queer community around religion, because of the horrible things that some folks say and use religion as an excuse for, when that's not actually what's being taught. And I myself am not religious, but I do kind of have some idea what the Bible does say. And as you said, there's nothing in the Bible that says this. It's just they happen
Hmm.
to use their interpretation of it to advance their own homophobic views. It's we did actually have a really interesting conversation a while back on the podcast about, you know, aspec identity and religion. And one of the folks themselves was a lapsed Christian, and talked about many of the same things that you're talking about right now.
Hmm. Yeah, and it as someone who does, with my faith the way that it is, like, it does make me sad when people think that they can't be gay and Christian at the same time. Like it's kind of sad. It's like you have this faith, but everybody who says they share the same faith as you rejects you and says that you're going to hell. And yeah, it can be really difficult to hear that from people who are supposed to be on your side.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Absolutely. We've talked about misconceptions around aromanticism. We've talked about kind of the invisibility of it. And we've talked about some of the uh, depictions, the very limited depictions in media. Um, and there's not many, unfortunately, for aromanticism. What about books, either fiction or nonfiction, that you can think of?
I will admit I'm not much of a reader. Uh, like my egg donor, she tried to get me into Harry Potter. It took me a full year to read one of those books because I just kept getting distracted and stuff. So like I'm not really much of a reader. I definitely prefer more visual media because it keeps my attention better. So I'm afraid I'm not really great for that sort of thing.
No worries. How about games? Can you think of any games that have aspec identities built in?
I don't know about games, but I would say Ash from Pokemon is kind of very A-spec coded. Like, there's literally one scene, one episode, like at the very beginning, in the very first season, where he seems like he's actually attracted to a girl, and then everywhere else, he's completely oblivious to any advances from other girls. Uh, the girls simp for Ash, but he has no clue at all. And I do kind of headcanon that he might be Aero Ace, because, just how clueless he is when it comes to that stuff. A date? What is that? Some new kind of Pokemon?
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, I could also make the argument that Ash is maybe not old enough to be feeling attraction yet, so I don't know if it's his age, but you could very well be right. Exactly, because
I mean,
how is he supposed? How old is he supposed to be? 10 or 11?
I mean, canonically he's 10, but like you can also argue that all these other girls are his age and they're all feeling the same
True.
they're all feeling these feelings.
True. That's a good point. So, and with that, with that lens, you are making a good point there. And as Hugster Duke mentioned, as a alloromantic ace himself, this actually last summer during the Ace and Arrow raid train was actually the first time that he had come across the term aromanticism. So even within the broader A-spec community, it's not always, understood.
Yeah. Yeah, because I probably wouldn't even know about A-spec, at least not as soon as I did, unless my friend Fishy hadn't told me about it. Otherwise, I might not have known that was a thing until meeting you.
Yeah, and I have to give the credit to the folks in large part in the Aces and STEM Discord and talking about their experiences. And then it was like looking back retrospectively on, the one relationship I actually was in for a year and being like, yeah, I can see so many patterns here that, when you link these with the perpetual series of excuses about being too busy to want to date, there's a very hard and clear picture crystallizing here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it is very easy to make excuses just because it really is hard to make people understand.
And also, you are so hardwired from the time that you're a child to expect to be looking for, to expect to have to date, that if you don't see that representation, if you don't have those critical discussions where you reject or question at least societal norms, it's very hard to really come to that realization. Absolutely. So that's why it's so incredibly important to have visible arrow representation, to have these discussions about what relationships can look like, because without it, it is so hard to figure out.
Oh yeah. Like going back to Jaden's video for a moment, that was something that she mentioned, which again helped me, was her talking about how when she was a child, she would actively look for people to have a crush on because in her mind, that's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to have a crush, and she just could not find anybody. And it's like that was a really interesting way for her to put it, I thought, was that yeah, when you're someone who is on the A spectrum but hasn't had that realization yet, you are kind of on the lookout, but you just can't, and it can be kind of frustrating because you can't seem to find anybody whom you do have those feelings for, even though you are looking for it because society tells you you're supposed to.
Absolutely. And you are not the first person to say that. I was talking with Caberhook a few episodes back, and they said something almost identical. They said that for them, when people would ask them what their ideal crush would look like, they would come up with like some random series of traits just to answer the question because they're like, I honestly can't come up with an answer.
Like, if
So,
anything, I was more attracted to cartoon characters when I was a
yeah.
kid.
Absolutely, you know, it's so much easier to kind of get to feel that connection to the TV character than it is to somebody in real life. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is something I've struggled with for a long time is figuring out, you know, we talked a lot about on the podcast ace representation, but arrow representation is one I constantly struggle with because the limited representations that do exist tend to be arrow ace and extremely limited. And so the only books I can tend to recommend are the nonfiction books, like this one here, Love Expanded. Books like Ace Dad Advice, aka Cody Diagonal Orion's books on Ace and Arrow Relationship Guide, and those kinds of books where they're actually written by you know, the folks, you know, YouTubers and other content creators who are aromantic or, you know, at least ace themselves, but they don't really have any
Mhm.
great ideas beyond that for a lot of representation. So if folks in the chat do know of some good arrow representation, whether it's in a game, whether it's in a book, please let me know. I would love to know about it. Ace, I've got some. They're not great, but I've got some idea. But Arrow, I'm constantly running up against a wall trying to come up with good suggestions on that.
I guess another character that I could see being like a fictional character that I could see being kind of like Arrow Ace, I could actually see Marcy from Amphibia being Arrow Ace. Cause like she's focused more on, you know, her adventures stuff on her video games, and you never really see her interested in that sort of thing. But like Anne and Sasha, you absolutely can totally see, like, they never like develop crushes because, like, for one thing, they're living in this world of amphibians, but like you could tell from their personalities that they are the types of girls who would be attracted to guys, or at the very least, Sasha, you could totally see her as being. I think they actually do confirm in the finale that she is a lesbian. But like Marcy, with her personality, you really cannot see. You can't really picture her being in a romantic relationship. It's another one of those where it's like there's not really a whole lot of context in the show to say if she is or not. But like you could see it, but that's another one of those things where it's like it's a headcanon at this point.
Absolutely. There's lots of, you know, lots of headcanon, lots of you know, things that we can potentially interpret as Arrow or Arrow Ace. But yeah, not a lot of canon representation in mainstream media at all, and it tends to be the indie media that does it the best, anyways.
Oh yeah.
It's the indie books that have got the A-spec representation, and not just the token A-spec representation, not the one-dimensional, very flat, boring A-spec representation, but where the A-spec identity happens to be a part of their character, but there's more nuanced character development that takes place beyond just their arrow aceness or their aceness.
Oh yeah. It's one of the reasons why I wish that we did get more shows where you have characters that just don't end up in relationships by the end of the show. And I mean shows where they have the opportunity. Like obviously we've got shows like Amphibia where there's no real opportunity for the main characters to end up in a relationship. Most of the shipping from that comes from people shipping Anne and Sasha together, and also all of the Amphibia characters you can ship together. But you can't really ship the human characters with anyone because there's no one there's so few humans for them to interact with. But I mean, like an actual show like say Starburst the Force of Evil, where everybody around the characters are human and possibly could be in a relationship with the main character at the end, but then you have the main character just never shows interest at all in anybody, same sex or not, and just doesn't end up in a relationship. And I do think we need more shows like that, especially in kids media, that show that it's okay to not be in a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. You know, kids media is absolutely terrible for, you know,
And
telling
that's when it's
kids
most
that
important.
everybody's going to find the partner. They're going to find the one.
Yeah. And that's what's most important to teach kids about this sort of thing, is so that, kids, that even when they aren't old enough to have those realizations, they can still feel
Yeah,
outcasted by this. And it's like, well, why am I different from everyone else? And it leads them to trying to force themselves
mm,
to be like everybody else.
absolutely. And then, you get the big, the big mainstream media creators, and it is like the thing that everybody expects is, oh, the characters have to get together in the end. That's like the way that all media finishes. They finally find the one, and it's like, but what if they
Mhm.
don't? Can that not be a completely valid option too?
Yeah. Like, there was one character that I actually could see as like being like kind of representation for that. If you've ever seen the Disney movie Tangled, there was a TV spinoff, and there's a character in that named Cassandra. Aside from one episode where she pretends to be attracted to this guy, mainly because she knows that he's up to something. He claims to be a bibliophile so that he can steal this important book. And she's like, "You spelled bibliophile wrong in your letter. I knew you were a fraud from the start." And it's basically just, she's baiting him because but that's literally the only time they ever show her. And and they tell you, no, it's fake. So like, that's another, but like, something like that for a main character. You can have side characters that can satisfy your shipping needs if you want, but let's have a show where the main character doesn't have, has no interest in romantic relationships at all.
Exactly. It's always, if it does appear at all, it's always very minor characters, side characters, the token one-off character. But what about the main character with the nuanced character development? That's what we are looking for.
Yeah. Like, you could even do a storyline where it kind of looks like they might end up together, but then the characters are like, "Yeah, you're like a sister to me." Which was kind of what Tangled the series did, was like, oh, fans did ship Rapunzel and Cassandra together, but then at the end it's like, no, we're basically sisters, Your mother kidnapped me as a child and raised me as her own. We're sisters. Kind of a messed up way to become sisters, but
Mm-hmm. The most ideal representation I would love to see, but this is a huge stretch that we're not going to see for years, is why not allow for alternative relationship structures like a queer platonic partnership? But I mean, that's a far too big of an ask for
yeah.
for media to include anytime soon.
Yeah, I'll admit that doesn't really seem like something you could do in a kids show.
No, not definitely not a kids show, but like I'm just saying, a TV show. Why can't there
Mhm.
be like the queer platonic representation sometime. Please, I want to see it.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things I love about found family shows is that the focus is more on the found family than the found relationship. It's the focus is on, hey, we're not related by blood, but we love each other like family anyways. Because that's where that focus is on, and not on, hey, I think I'm attracted to you, let's go out.
No, exactly. And it's the found family, it's the chosen family that can be some of the most impactful relationships for me. Absolutely. It's the folks that I've come to meet in the communities that I go visit in Toronto, hang out with, go, grab ramen with. They mean so much to me. They are what are, giving me that energy to, continue to try to finish my PhD. I don't need the only life partner. For me, the way that I find I my ideal relationships currently are the communities that I've built around me, the ones in Toronto, the ones locally, and the opportunities that I get to interact with these different communities. I would say it's the whole is more than the sum of its parts. It's the ability to rely on these different communities that together each contribute their own unique aspects, but as a whole, they really fulfill and give me that energy that I need to keep on going.
Hmm. Oh yeah, like that's kind of my plan at this point is to like there's no way that any of the three of us would be able to survive on our own, but like uh me and my roommate are trying to get to Canada to be with Fishy, and that's kind of our plans to just like the three of us eventually, get a house together up there and just live out the rest of our days as, a family, them as a couple and me as the sister.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. That is that is perfectly okay. That is all that many of us in the ASPEC community are asking for, and that would be amazing to see that happen.
I don't need a partner. I've got Leo.
Yep. So many ASPEC folks. Actually, I remember meeting somebody um, in the Ace and Arrow community once that was wearing a shirt that said um, what was it? Oh man.
So, oh man, that's an interesting shirt.
No, it was, you know, it was the I think it was a alternative. Oh wow, we're getting raided.
Oh,
Yo, welcome on in. BSW Bloodstained Wings, B-dubs. How was your stream? What were you up to? No worries at all. Thank you so much for raiding on in.
welcome, readers.
Let me give you a shout out.
Yes, always love a good raid.
Absolutely. Let me give you a shout out. Oh, heck yeah. I'm so glad you made some good progress in Xenoblade.
Miss Future too. I've considered checking out Xenoblade a few times before. It's like I'm pretty sure that's the one that's. Oh no, I might be thinking of something else. It looked interesting. Just it didn't look like the kind of thing I normally play, but at least looked interesting. I've considered that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much again for the raid. I know you've probably had a really long day. If anybody from the raid does need to raid and run, IRL always comes before URL, and I totally understand that. But if you do want to stick around, we would love to have you. It is, but I mean, I love my retro video games. That's what draws me. I find so much more value in OG Pokemon than I do the newer Pokemon games personally. It's the nostalgia that I feel playing retro video games.
That's why I'm
So,
so mad that they still haven't put Coliseum and Gale of Darkness on this list
real
too.
for real, right?
I want to stream
Oh,
them so much.
right?
I know everyone tells me, oh, well, they don't really do too well in streams. Like, I don't care. I don't stream just for views. I stream because I enjoy it.
That's why I stream. I
Though it is nice to have
yeah,
people in chat.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's so wonderful. The chatters, the folks that come out to the podcast that share their experiences. That's what makes this so wonderful. And, the ability to learn from our experiences. And I know that many of you have shared that through these discussions we've been having, you've come to learn about your own ASPEC identities that you weren't aware of before. And hearing stuff like that just means so much to me.
It really does make it all the worthwhile knowing that you helps to improve somebody's quality of life.
Absolutely.
And like even in the short term, just knowing that somebody, even just one person, sees your community as a safe place that they can just be themselves and be safe in. It really is a great feeling, and that's something that I've always strived for as a content creator is to just create that safe space. So I never shy away from
Absolutely.
telling my own stories because hey, if someone else can hear my story and say, yeah, that's kind of similar to me, or wow, that makes me realize the things that are going on in my life are not what I thought they were. It's worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I absolutely love being a co-facilitator of a Ace and Arrow group here locally. That's why I started the podcast. If I can help somebody learn something from my experience, learn something from our discussions, that's what brings me joy. So we
Yeah.
are coming up to an ad break here. So it might be a good time to maybe jump on a BRB screen. I'll go grab some water, and we'll be back in, say, uh, another, 3 or maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. Does that sound good, folks?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we'll jump on the BRB screen, and we'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes. All right, welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking around. Apologies about going on break there so quickly after being rated. I could only snooze that ad so many times, unfortunately, before we got the ads.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at this point, I'd like to ask what Arrow Pride means for you.
I mean, for the most part, it's like I am definitely content with myself, but like being able to show people that there is another way to live. Because like we kind of talked about before, how people don't usually really think about that sort of thing, but like being able to spread awareness is definitely something that I do feel is an important thing, and it's something I'm really glad that you're here to do.
Aw, thank you. It means so much to me to create these spaces, to have these discussions, to talk about what aromanticism is, because there's so many people for whom they've never come across the term. And without that language, how do you find community?
Exactly. And that's the thing about language is that it is always evolving. Every word in existence, even the word word, has been made up at some point or another.
You are so right
So,
about that. Absolutely.
yeah. So it is nice to have you know, these things that, we've been able to develop over the years, words like, aromanticism in order to uh verbally explain, like verbally what's the word?
Describe.
Uh yeah, describe, exemplify the fact that, this is something that can and does happen.
Absolutely. That there are folks who don't experience romantic attraction. There are folks for whom they don't want to be in a coupled monogamous romantic relationship. And it's perfectly okay not to be in one. That is a valid life experience.
Exactly.
And I always love talking about QPRs and, other kinds of relationships and how relationships don't have to be romantic. They don't have to be what you see in the media. They can be what you want them to be.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, everything has its first. And, like, Steven Universe gave us the first same gender, gems don't really have sexes, but the same gender marriage in in children's media, and that was the first, and now it's a lot more accepted. And there's always a first, so I'm looking forward to when we could say we've got the first real true representation for of aspec, just in general in media, especially kids media. I'm very much looking forward to the first for that.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the time that in mainstream media we hear the term queer platonic partnership, that we find characters in relationships that don't meet those which societies or societal norms dictate they should be in.
Someone in chat is like, "Oh, I went to this they went to my channel and saw some beautiful images." That stuff is so old. I've got much better art on my social medias, I swear.
Yeah, we on that note, where can we find you on the social medias?
So I'm on YouTube. I am on Blue Sky. I don't go on Twitter practically ever anymore. I only go if, like, there's something I wanted to check that I heard about elsewhere. But I'm also on Tumblr. If you're into Miraculous Ladybug fan content, I have a gender bent series that I do over there.
Oh, hell yeah.
Uh, Oh yeah, and that's the thing about being if you're agendered, that means that you're literally the only thing that changes is sex. You're still agender whether you're on one side or the other because
Mm-hmm.
you're in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, all of those are under either Matsuyorific or Matsuyorific YT. And then, of course, my YouTube channel as well. Do all
Which I've
sorts
pinned
of
in the
big.
channel, or I've pinned in the chat there up at the top. I'll copy and paste that as well.
Appreciated. Sometimes we do art streams, so they're not very often, considering the fact that they're not usually as I'm not usually as energetic when I'm drawing because I'm focusing on the picture that I'm working on. But we do sometimes do art streams if I'm feeling, yeah, feels like a bit like today's just gonna be chill. We do some chill art streams. When I eventually get back to my "What if Adrian had a twin sister" series, you'll see my artwork in those as well. I am a few months behind, but if you're a channel member, I do post drawing pages of my art pieces. They're basically just, line arts Just very basic line arts that you can download for yourself and color in if you're a channel member. I also get them out every month as well, so you might get lucky enough if you don't have the ability to become a member just for those. And yeah, when I make new pieces, I usually post them to my Blue Sky or my Tumblr.
I
Not had a lot of inspiration to draw lately, but I'm trying to get back.
absolutely, and I look forward to seeing them when they do come out. So
Yep,
at this point, I guess we'll go on a raid so that we don't. I'm getting a little tired here myself. It's been a long couple days.